So here's another video in our series on finding a homestead. We're going to call this one, So You Found a Property, Now What? And I think this is a really important one. I know once you get all excited to find the property and you put an offer in and then you're like, oh shit, now what do I do? And because there's so much to look into. And you just hear of all these horror stories of people moving onto a piece of property and it just doesn't work out. And I think, I spent years like talking and seeing, programs and shows, and you hear about people moving on to a property and starting a homestead, and these people don't have good drinking water. They don't have shelter, and I'm just like, oh, no way. Like I almost feel like I'm too old, I'm too experienced, like I don't want that to happen to me. And luckily we are not starting from scratch. We've been kind of in this industry for a while, in the sense that I was with the farm. I've been homesteading in my urban setting, which I think is really important. Like I find that there's people who wait to get on the piece of property before they homestead, and I feel like you need to take every opportunity you can to learn whatever skills it is that you can learn now where you are. And I don't know if that's just because, I do come from a farm background, or this is something I'm really interested in. I kind of feel like, I'm like a modern homesteader. I'm not really looking to roughen it. Yes, I can roughen it. I can get dirty. I can work hard. But I just, I'm in this season of life that we've roughened it enough. I mean, like we have lived paycheck to paycheck, and have built, financial kind of stability to us. We've raised our children already. Our children are going to be off to university, in the next year or two. Both of them will be out of the house, kind of the thing. So we have sacrificed a lot to be where we are. And we really wanted to make sure that this next season was going to be as smooth as possible. So we're just going to go through some of the things that we feel are super important to figure out and get inspected. So we've come up with a list of things that we feel are really important. We didn't come up with this list all on our own. We did some research. I asked other homesteaders, what they felt is really important to look more into. And we came up with a list. So let's just jump into it. One of the things we did when we went and looked at the property and we were like, wow, okay, we are really interested in this property. We actually went a second day to kind of check things out a little bit more. So when we did that, we drove around in the neighborhood to see how the other properties looked. We drove to a close, big town close by. We, we looked on Google Maps to see where the houses were, how close our neighbors were. When we walked the property, we knew we actually couldn't see anybody's home. Because we are on top of the hill and it was a rainy day, it was foggy. So when we looked, we couldn't see any houses. So that's when, like, Google Earth, they're really good to you can kind of see where your neighbors are. And the only neighbors are at the bottom of the hill. And then we also looked at the county.
Yeah, our county has a nice overlay on top of maps to be able to see the different tax lots. So you can kind of see the lines between your lot and other lots and kind of who owns them and get a sense for how they're zoned. So you get a good idea of how the land around you was being used. And that was really helpful for us.
So, we asked the sellers, real estate agent. She was there when we looked at the property. And so we asked her about some of the neighbors when we walked the lot. To the north is, it was recently logged, and that's owned by a logging company. And since it's been recently logged, I think within the last 3 years, so we know that they're not going to be coming back in there for 7 to 30 years, which is appealing to us. The lot to the south of us is trees, pretty mature trees, but we learned that it's owned by like a water reserve place. So it didn't sound like they'll be doing anything, anytime soon. And then to the west is actually our property goes pretty far to the west and down to a ridge. That's our property. It has been recently timbered. So, and then there isn't property until like at the bottom of the ridge. And then to the east, actually the seller owns that land, so 81 acres to the east. And we looked up, and well, they told us that it is up for sale, but it's because it's farmland. You can't build on there unless you've been farming it and bringing in certain amount of income for however long. So we felt we at least have a couple of years, even if they sell that there's not gonna be anything. And if somebody buys it, it's gonna be more like a winery or maybe somebody like us.
It'll be a farm.
It will be a farm, so we weren't too concerned about that. And then we were happy with, there's a nice big town like 15 minutes away where we could do all our shopping and stuff. So, and we felt really comfortable with.
So one of the important things for us to consider was access to the property. It's not way out there by any stretch of the imagination, but it is a little bit isolated, and it's a fairly long drive from the road to where our property is. And so there are a couple of things that we needed to consider. One was, the overall condition of the road, because it is on top of a hill. It's a gravel drive. One of the things we needed to think about is what kind of vehicles do we need to be able to get up and down, especially on, those rare snowy days. Do we need a plow, stuff like that. None of it was a big cause for concern for us, but it was just something that we needed to think about. And then the other, I think the big topic, an important topic, and one that I think a lot of people who buy property in the country need to think about, is easements. And if you don't know what an easement is, it's basically a right-of-way either through your property or through someone else's property to access your property. Now, in our case, we have to go through 2 or 3 lots in order to get to our property, which means that we had an easement with these other lots to be able to have access to our property. And so it was important for us to understand exactly what those agreements. An easement is basically an agreement with the other landowners that gives you rights on that road, essentially. And so it was important for us to read that, understand what rights we had. Could we only use it for ourselves? Was it looser? What our obligations were for maintaining that road? Did we own half of it? Did we have to chip in a quarter, or whatever the case may be? Could they put a gate in? Could they have cattle roam across the road? All of that is stuff that we needed to look at in the agreement, just to make sure that whatever those terms were something that we were comfortable with. In our case, we were. So, we were able to move forward with the purchase of our property, knowing that we had the easements we needed, and also knowing that if those lots got subdivided in the future or anything like that, we would always be able to retain, access rights to our property. So, I mean, in addition to looking at our, the neighboring properties, how to get onto the property, one of the things that we ended up having done through our purchase process was a survey of our lot. And, because some of the plans we have for the property might involve us putting perimeter fencing in around, just to keep animals in and stuff like that, we thought it was really important for us to understand exactly where our lot lines are. Also, it's important to make sure you know where your lot lines are, because sometimes people will have a fence that sits on your property, or they may, it can actually get pretty bad, and they could have a permanent structure on your property. And if you don't know where your lines are going into buying the property, you could get into a pretty sticky legal situation with a neighbor, which is obviously not something you want to do ever, but certainly not something you want to do when you're just kind of new to the area. So, we had a survey done. They kind of marked out where all the borders of our property are, and we kind of had a little bit of a scare with a fence, but it turned out to, be okay. And, it just gave us a little bit of peace of mind that, nobody's done anything on our property, and we know exactly if we do want to put a fence up, where we need to put that fence up.
So then the other thing we did was have inspections done. So we had an inspection done on the home, inside, out, the garage, and the barn. And, it's just like any home inspection. They're going to look for kind of the basics. And luckily, there was just few minor things, which, every house is going to have some minor things. We did have to go back and forth with the seller of like what they would take care of, what we would take care of, what we would prefer to take care of. By law, some of the things they had to take care of. But we were actually really impressed with the inspection and how it went. So, especially since we didn't walk into the home and kind of do a walk through. So we were very lucky with that.
Utilities is a big topic when buying a property, and because this is an off-grid property, it was an area that, at least I really paid a lot of attention to. The property is basically powered through solar panels with a battery bank, and there is a wind turbine, although we're not 100% sure how much that really contributes effectively to powering the home. It does have a backup in the form of a generator, so that actually made us feel pretty good, because we knew that even if for whatever reason we ran out of electricity, through the batteries and solar, we could always turn the generator on and have power. But it was a big thing that we needed to look at, and mostly because the solar system was a little older, it was really more about figuring out what kind of a new solar system we would want to put in and how much that would cost. And so we went through an exercise of looking at the appliances in the home, how much power they draw, maybe some things that aren't there right now that we would want to add, like some additional freezers, maybe some power tools, stuff like that. And just trying to get a sense for how much power do we need, and what the cost for a system like that was going to be. And when you're buying any property, there are improvements that you want to make, and you just need to be comfortable that you're going to be able to afford to make those improvements when the time comes. Other than electricity and the generator, most of the other stuff in the homestead is either powered or uses propane. And that was a really nice setup there. They had a really nice setup already where they're just leasing a tank It's not very expensive to lease, and the firm that they're leasing from comes and refills the tank periodically. And so that's something we figured we'll just continue because it's really easy. We don't have to worry about the condition of the tank. We don't have to worry about maintaining it in any way, and it's not really that expensive.
The other thing was to have the septic tank inspected. In our county, you have to have a septic tank, so and we knew it was relatively new since the house is new. And you just call somebody up that comes inspects it, and they actually like drain it and clean it, and then they inspect it to make sure that it's still intact, that the leach lines are still good and in working order. That all went really well. It really helped us, since we've never had a septic tank. It kind of educated us, like we can't have any animals or really park or run anything in the front yard, which is actually a pretty big piece. So I was like, oh wow, that really runs into some of the pasture. But it all worked out well. So then we do have well water. There's a well on the property. It was put in the 1980, so it was like the original water source for the property. And we had it flow tested. They didn't open it up to look for the depth, but they did have the records from when they put it in, and they felt that since the flow was still the same as it was when they originally put it in, they felt that the depth was still the same. We had the water tested, so it's not just potable water. We also tested, if it's high in salt or iron or any of that. So we did pay a little bit extra to have it tested, even a little bit more than what they basically test for. But we were really lucky that it came out good, potable water. So we really felt really good about that.
In addition to, really taking a close look at the well, one of the things that we needed to understand better was water rights in the area. Oregon is a little bit of a unique state in the sense that a lot of states will allow you to dig a pond, so you can collect water and use that to water your animals or plants or whatever it is you may want to do. But in Oregon, you actually have to get a permit to dig a pond or to divert a stream or any of that kind of stuff. So we had to think about where we wanted to use well water. Do we want to water our animals with well water? Do we want to look at rain catchment, which is something you can do in Oregon?
But only if it's on like a hard surface. So like you can't like catch water in the pond, but if you can collect water off a hard surface, so mainly like a roof.
A roof, yeah.
And we noticed already that there was some water catchment. We noticed that there was one in the garden and there was one off the barn. So we know that's already there. We asked about like where spigots were. We asked them to kind of give us a rough estimate of where the line from the well to the house was. And you can actually kind of see that on Google too, where there's kind of an indentation through the land where the line is. So we feel pretty comfortable with being able just to catch the water off the hard surfaces.
Yeah, I mean, we have a lot of roofs between the garage, the house, and the barn. And, because we're not going to be going gangbusters from the beginning, we can start with the well water and just kind of, use that while we establish, catchment systems around the homestead. I mean, another key aspect to look at is, phone service, internet service. For us, that's especially important because we will be kind of back and forth between properties. And, when our kids are on the property or when I'm there, if I'm working remotely, I need a very good internet connection so I can do all the things I need to do. And so that was one of the areas where we needed to explore. Being on top of a hill was a boon in this area for us because, when you're out in the country, there aren't that many different ways to get internet, satellite, point-to-point wireless, unless you're kind of in the city boundaries where maybe you'll get, broadband like cable modem or DSL. And in our case, we're far enough out that, we're going to do some kind of wireless internet. But being on top of a hill gives us good clear line of sight to our internet service provider, which means that we get a nice fast link, which is exactly what we were looking for. And then when we visited the property, one of the things that we were really careful to check is just our cell service. So as we were walking around, we just kind of, when we thought of it, we just kind of looked at our phones to make sure that we had good signal. Because, I don't know about others, but we just use our cell phones. We don't have a landline. We wouldn't plan on putting a landline on the property. And so we just want to make sure that we have strong signal, we can make calls, we're not going to have reliability issues if we did need to make a call.
So with the cell service, our real estate agent, he was there with some of the inspections, and he's like, "Oh, your cell service is awesome." He's like, "I've been walking around, I made phone calls here and there," and he was really impressed with the cell service. So we feel really thankful to have good cell service. And also because I'm going to be doing education, I am going to have to use social media. So it's really nice that we have good cell service. So one of the other things is about waste removal. Because the property is actually relatively clean, it didn't have a bunch of junk on the property. There is some, and I know the seller was like, "Oh, I'll remove this," or "I'll take care of this," and we were kind of like, "Don't worry about it. If you don't want it, just leave it." And we asked what she does for like trash removal, and because I was like, "You're not going to be hauling a trash can, a mile down the driveway for pickup." And she just brings her trash to the dump, which isn't very far away, which to me isn't a big deal. We don't generate very much trash, and I'm actually looking forward to kind of having this service where we have to really be conscious of what we do with our trash and how much we make. So I'll look forward to it. Yeah, you have to have like a truck, or we have the van for now to kind of put it in, but also we'll have to think about where we're going to store some of the stuff, or unless we go regularly. But we don't make very much trash, and none of the trash should be like icky trash. We'll still compost and hold on to things and recycle. So, the trash and stuff isn't that concerning to us. So one of the other big things, because we do want to educate, we want to share this property with others. That was another big thing when we walked on this property, and we kind of walked past onto the west end, the back end, and I was like, wow, this is a beautiful location to share with people. So we kind of already knew in the area they had to be really careful about extra structures on the property. They really frown upon having people stay on your property. Even if it's an RV, you can't spend more than 31 days in 6 months, even on your own property, which could be a really big issue for a lot of homesteaders. They want to live on their property while they build their home, or they want to, generate extra income by having rental properties, and we can't do that. So we kind of already knew that about the area, but then with this property, we really went to the county and talked to them more about it. Yeah, so one of the other things is zoning, which was pretty easy. we kind of learned from the seller's real estate agent that, we are zoned as a farm. And we also learned just from the kind of area that we knew that putting extra dwellings for people to live in was probably going to be a no-go. We knew that kind of going in. But because now we knew what county exactly we were in, we could go to the county and ask them more. So you did that.
Yeah, so I spent a lot of time looking at the county website and just reading the rules kind of as they're written around what's allowed and not allowed on farmland. And that was really helpful. But I think the most helpful thing was just being able to get in contact with various folks at the county to understand what we needed permits for, whether we could have housing on the land, what the rules around that were, and just getting a feel for at the end of the day what the county, like in spirit, what the county is trying to prevent, what they're trying to promote, and gave us a good set of guidelines in terms of how we could use the homestead in the short term, and where we might need to work with the county over time to accomplish programs that we may want to do in the future, but we may not be permitted to do right now.
Yeah, I mean, we learned that, we weren't prohibited about, the amount of animals that we wanted. What we want to do is perfectly fine. We don't have to get extra permits for that. We learned that, even for the extra dwellings for family members, that there's a hardship that we can apply for, so we could put a manufactured home onto the property. So if we needed that for a loved one, they do need to be related to you, and they need to have some kind of hardship to be able to do it, in the sense of they're elderly, or they're have fallen on hard times, or that they're handicapped, or they for whatever reason are dependent on you. So we felt comfortable with that. And then with having people come and stay the night, it's still really kind of not super clear, because you don't want to give them too much information, but you want to get enough information from them. But we felt that we could work with them. We know that they do have ecotourism plan put together. It is kind of old. They do recognize that they need more places for people to stay. So we felt that, and from our experience, that if we put a good proposal together, go to the county and say, we want to do these things. These are things we're already doing. These are the things we'd like to do. How can we work with them? So we felt comfortable that we can still educate people and still get them to kind of, if they really needed to, stay the night, even if it's tents for spend the night. We don't expect to bring tons of people onto the property. We do have a big barn with a loft area that's really big, where we can do events, and we didn't see many problems of bringing groups of people onto the property. So we felt pretty comfortable that we can do all the things that we want to do. Maybe some things we might need to get permitted, other things not so much. And we felt like if we did need to get a permit, it wasn't going to be that hard for farm-related things, like a greenhouse or a high tunnel or farm structures. We didn't seem that it was going to be any problem. Well, I hope you liked this video, and I hope it gave you some information on to what look into when you're ready to purchase a homestead. I will write down a lot of these in the show notes, so you can kind of have a list, so you can take and kind of go from there and apply what is for your property. And this is just one of the first few videos about our homesteading journey. We are super excited to go on this next journey, and we will have some more videos on important things that we feel that you should look into when you're purchasing a home. Like this video. If you did, push the like button, share, and subscribe to my channel, because we will be bringing you a bunch more videos.